Hello. Today I'd like to talk about extroverted sensation and hedonism. It's not unusual in the Jungian community to stereotype SE dominant types as hedonists by virtue of their attachment to the object and their predilection for intensive stimulation. From the beginning, we must separate a desire for intensive stimulation from actual hedonism. Hedonism, as it is generally understood, means the exclusive pursuit of pleasure, whereas SE is interested in the highest pitch of reality, of experiencing things in a highly intensive way, and is not philosophically aligned with pleasure alone. SE types, generally speaking, if they're going to develop a higher sense of taste, require, I believe, the action of their other functions to help to shape their desire for stimulation. SE has a great capacity to delineate between separate factors within a thing observed, and subsequently is capable of a highly refined taste, I believe, if it can work in conjunction with their other functions. Understandably, if SE is predominant, most of the other functions are going to have, at best, a partial directing role in shaping the taste of the individual. No matter how refined the SE dominant type becomes, most likely he's always going to some degree, be given over to bursts of desire for simply intensive experience. For example, the SE dominant wine taster at a fancy dinner who suddenly bursts out in a crude joke because he enjoys the stimulation of the audience and the resultant indication of his capacity to work an intensive effect on people. It's not unusual for SE dominant types to walk a line between a kind of refinement and a kind of crudity. This is because their main aim, again, is an intensive experience of reality, and again, I believe their lesser functions are the functions that guide them towards either something more generally acceptable or something generally less acceptable in terms of that aim. Subsequently, for the SE type, there is no certain and marked out path to be pursued in pursuing intense sensation, but instead it happens almost as a sort of accident, insofar as the lesser three functions are capable of guiding the activity of the dominant function. Therefore, SE types shouldn't be thought of exclusively as a kind of hedonist, as a kind of crude, boorish person who's simply looking for an excuse to slap his knee and make a crude joke, but instead as a railroad engine careening down the path who follows both the high portions of the track as well as the low portions of the track in a more or less indiscriminate fashion, because generally speaking the SE type is not particularly concerned with the social view of his behavior or with any long-term consequences to be derived from his behavior. Therefore, it's not unusual for the SE type's psychological career to exhibit a certain accidental quality whilst retaining a general consistency by virtue of the fact that he is indeed a human being, and thereby does, of course, have consistent factors within his makeup, even if his chief aim is a unvarnished connection with objective reality. In a word, an SC type has a certain accidental quality by virtue of the fact that SE itself is concerned with an intensive experience of the moment, and seeing as whenever we're looking at a person's personality, we tend to track it over a long course of his psychological career, as you might call it. There appears to be a great deal of the accidental in his makeup, when in fact his behavior is entirely predictable. It is simply the means he employs to live out that behavior. So that in fact, the accidental quality apparently inherent in the SE type is not truly in the SE type, it's purely an error of our attempt to extract something more consistent from him, by which I mean we look to the results of his behavior and the types of his behavior to derive a certain consistency of understanding with regards to his personality, when in fact we ought to look for a consistency of motive, because the results invariably are going to change and the expedients he uses will invariably change, because SE is entirely indiscriminate in itself with regards to the methods it uses. Now, of course, again, the lower three functions are going to exhibit an influence upon the methods used by the SE type, and therefore there will be a certain loose consistency. But generally speaking, with regard to artistic taste and with regard to experience of the world, there's going to be, compared to more reserved types, a general appearance of haphazardness in the pursuit of his aims. So in sum, SE is not in fact hedonistic, because hedonism is a distinct philosophy whose purpose is to pursue pleasure at all possible chances, and SE, by virtue of the fact that it is only interested in intense experience of objective reality, carries on a much more accidental character than hedonism would impart to an individual. I think that's about it for now. I'll see you in the next video.